Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Let's talk about that little device. You know the one. It's probably within arm's reach of you right now. But what if I told you that just by being there, just sitting on your desk, it's actually draining your brain? Seriously. Today, we're diving into the hidden and kind of surprising cognitive cost of your smartphone.
So let me just ask you this. Picture the scene. You're trying to focus, you're working hard, your phone is right there, face down. No buzzes, no pings, not lighting up at all. You are completely focused. Or are you? All right, let's get into the numbers. Check this out. 85. The average smartphone owner interacts with their phone 85 times a day. No, that's not a typo. 85. I mean, think about it. It's the first thing many of us see in the morning and the last thing we look at before bed. So researchers started asking this really fascinating and frankly kind of terrifying question. What is this constant presence actually doing to our brains? Well, that brings us to something called the brain drain hypothesis. The core idea is basically this. Just having your phone nearby, even if you're totally ignoring it, is like running a power-hungry app in the background of your mind. It's quietly gobbling up your precious mental resources, which means you have less brain power left for, everything else you're trying to do. Okay, so how on earth does a silent little rectangle manage to do that? Well, it all comes down to the science of our attention and the very real limits of our own brains. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Your brain's available attention is like a battery. It's got a finite charge, and that charge is what scientists call your working memory capacity. It's what you use to hold on to information and, to think. And the most important thing to know is that battery can and absolutely does get drained. And get this, that very same battery also powers something called your fluid intelligence. This is your raw problem-solving horsepower. It's your ability to think on your feet, to solve a puzzle you've never seen before. So your short-term memory and your problem-solving skills are sipping juice from the exact same, very limited power source. So, to put this whole brain drain idea to the test, researchers came up with this really clever experiment. They got over 500 students to do a bunch of brainy tests. But here's the twist. They split them into 3 groups. The only thing that was different was where they put their phones. Group 1 had it right there on the desk, face down. Group 2 had it in their pocket or bag. And for Group 3, they had to leave it in another room entirely. And the results? Whoa, they were absolutely stunning. The group that left their phone in another room, they blew the others out of the water. They scored way higher on both the memory and problem-solving tests. And the group with the phone right there on the desk, they did the worst. It was this perfect straight-line relationship. The closer the phone was to them, the lower their cognitive performance. It's wild. And this just hammers home the study's biggest finding. It wasn't about the pings or the buzzes. In fact, the students in the study said they weren't even thinking about their phones. The real cost, the real brain drain, came from a part of their brain working subconsciously, in the background, just to not check the phone. Just the effort of resisting that urge, that is what was draining their mental battery. So, that subconscious fight to ignore your phone is the brain drain. Okay, but why? Why is it so hard for our brains to ignore this one specific thing? Well, it's because these devices aren't just passive tools. They are, quite literally, perfectly crafted addiction engines. The mechanism they use is something called a compulsion loop. And this isn't new. This comes straight from those old Skinner box experiments. It works like this. First, there's a cue, a notification, or maybe just the thought of your phone. That triggers an action. You check it. And then you get a reward. This simple little loop is incredibly powerful at hardwiring a habit into your brain. But here's the real secret sauce that makes it so potent. The reward is variable and unpredictable. You never know when you're going to get a like, a comment, or an interesting message. It's a slot machine. You pull the lever, you check your phone, and maybe you win, maybe you don't. That unpredictability is what makes it so addictive, so incredibly hard to resist. Now, I'm sure you've heard people blame all this on dopamine, right? The so-called pleasure chemical. Well, that's actually a massive misconception. Dopamine isn't really about pleasure. It's about motivation. It's the chemical that tells your brain, hey, that thing you just did, that might be important. Do it again. It drives the hunt, the seeking, not the enjoyment of finding something. And because of this big misunderstanding, you get these trends like dopamine detox or dopamine fasting. Let's just be really clear. That term is a misnomer. It's scientifically just wrong.
Dopamine is a totally natural and essential part of how your brain works. You can't detox from it, and trust me, you really wouldn't want to.
So what are people actually doing when they try a dopamine detox? They're really using a classic, well-established technique from therapy called stimulus control. And it has nothing to do with resetting your brain chemistry. It's much simpler. It just means you strategically remove the thing that's tempting you. You get rid of the trigger so you don't have to waste energy fighting the impulse.
And that idea, managing your environment instead of just fighting your own brain, that leads us to a much more powerful, much smarter strategy.
Okay, so let's break down the two ways you can approach this battle for your brain. On one side, you've got good old willpower, but using willpower is like trying to hold a door shut in a hurricane. It's exhausting, it's draining, and eventually you're going to get tired, and that door's going to fly open. But on the other side, you've got pre-commitment. This is different. This is deciding way before the storm hits to just lock the door. One simple strategic move, and the fight is over before it even starts. You're not draining your battery, you're saving it.
And now this brings us full circle. Remember that experiment? Remember the group that did the best on the tests? The ones with the most brain power available? What did they do? They put their phone in another room. That was pre-commitment in action. They didn't even know they were doing it, but by making that one simple choice up front, they completely removed the temptation, and their brains were free to do the actual work.
And look, the science on self-control is totally clear on this. Pre-commitment is the go-to strategy precisely for situations where you expect your willpower to fail. And let's be honest, with our phones, willpower failure is pretty much expected. It's not about being stronger, it's about being smart enough to avoid the fight altogether.
All right, so let's put this all together. What is the practical takeaway for you and me just trying to get meaningful work done in this crazy, distracting world? Look, the bottom line here is actually surprisingly simple. We've learned that just having your phone around costs you brain power. That's the brain drain. We know it's because these things are designed like slot machines, forcing our brains to subconsciously fight the urge to check them. And since our willpower is a muscle that gets tired, the single best strategy is not to fight harder, but to fight smarter. The science is clear. When you truly need to focus, the most powerful thing you can do is pre-commit to putting your phone in another room. That's it.
And that leaves us with a really big, kind of uncomfortable question to think about. If the smartest, most effective way for us to use this incredibly powerful technology is to physically separate ourselves from it, what does that say about the tech itself? And what should we, the people using it every day, start demanding from the folks who design our digital world? Something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.